Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
Good.
Good. So I'm really excited today because we have Meredith Markworth-Pollack on, and she has PALMA Colectiva.
Yes.
And we were supposed to have her on a couple months ago, and it didn't work out, and I was really looking forward to it.
That's entirely superfluous.
Yes, but I love what she's doing right now.
I can interrupt.
Meaning the buildup has been there
Yeah.
with really wanting to meet her.
Okay.
I love what she's doing right now in the healing arts space in Santa Barbara.
Yeah.
She's really fascinating. She got her start in as a costume designer, and she was an assistant costume designer for Gossip Girl.
For years. And
For
very successful.
years on Gossip Girl. And Gossip Girl to me is when everything shifted and changed in fashion.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Before Gossip Girl, I mean, maybe it was happening, but before Gossip Girl, nobody was carrying anything designer. Everyone was more, it was really more, fashion was way more mainstream. And after Gossip Girl, there was a huge shift in designers and names. And yeah, that's my feeling about it.
Okay.
And it kind of changed everything. It had
Cool.
that momentum but anyway, Meredith,
Yeah.
amazing guest.
Yes, I knew her briefly back then.
Mm-hmm.
So her coming back into the onto my horizon is through this wellness program that she's put together, PALMA Colectiva. And it seems so comprehensive and so profound. And she's worked the ideal way of doing this, I think, by working in conjunction with already existing facilities where she can bring all of the options that she has in, depending on what the organization wants or she wants to produce for her clients.
Yeah, she's partnering and collaborating with a lot of great people in town and 5-star hotels and Zaka Lake. And she's really
having her own studio.
And having her own studio, which is soon to open. Probably will be open maybe by the release of this podcast.
Yeah.
So we're really excited about this episode.
Yeah.
And she knows your son, Ryan.
Yes, because...
which we didn't realize when I first started talking to her. That
no,
all came
I know.
together
That all
after.
came up because Ryan at that time had a company called The Cast, which was a men's clothing designer and producer. And their collaboration became through Gossip Girl because he did some of the costumes there.
Yeah.
So, and that was a very successful time for both of them. And now they both changed tracks. Ryan's a pilot for NetJets.
Yep.
And Meredith's doing what we're going to talk about today.
Enjoy the episode.
But what do I know? I'm just a vagina doctor. Meredith Markworth-Pollack. Great to have you on the Vagina Doctor podcast today. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Great. We have a bit of a past. It's not a big past together, but you knew my eldest son, Ryan, when you both worked in New York in the fashion industry. And now you have the PALMA Colectiva, which we're going to talk about mainly. But I want you to go back and talk about those Lower East Side experiences and what you were both doing and so on, because I think it adds a depth to what you're doing now, actually. So
Absolutely. Yeah, it was a wild time back then. We were both, I think, in our mid-20s, right around there. And the Lower East Side was just this bustling area. It was like right when it was really exploding into what we now know it as. A lot of artists, music, food scene, a big party scene. And Ryan and I and our group of friends all kind of were introduced together through a photographer, Dave Black. And I was just starting my career as a costume designer. And Ryan had started the line The Cast, which was, cool leather jackets and leather pants. And I got a job on Gossip Girl as the assistant designer. And we started using the pieces on the show and collaborating in that way. But also just our group of friends would always hang out. They had, as I know we've all visited, this incredible studio down in a basement that was
hole in the ground.
A hole
really.
in the ground.
Just,
some really late nights, early mornings spent in there. But there was a creative energy that was cultivated, and we all felt very important, I think, in our small little bubble. But we were doing really interesting things, and we were at the height. I was just out of college and living in New York, and kind of all fulfilling our dreams and supporting each other along the way. There was other friends that were fashion designers and photographers and working in film and TV production, and but it definitely we weren't going to sound baths and meditating, I'll tell you that much. We were having a good time, as you do when you're in your 20s in New York. But it's such a beautiful connection, because we were really good friends for quite a few years. And then, as life happens, we've all evolved and found our placement in the world and found new careers. And but I hold those times so dear to me, because they really helped shape me as far as my strength in my journey at the time, which was in costume design. But along the way has been someone who's really driven by the creative process. So very, very fond days in New York.
But you were really pretty successful too in that time.
Well, Gossip Girl really helped me. It really put me on the map and on a lot of people's radar, even though I wasn't even the main costume designer. I was the assistant, but I was young and eager and, working 18 hours a day.
Yeah.
And through that opportunity, I was led to a whole world of producers and network studio heads that recognized my work on that show and gave me a lot of opportunities. So that was a really pivotal moment for me, and then opened my career as a costume designer, which I shortly after being an assistant stepped into, and then spent, from there, probably the next 12, 14 years working as a costume designer, traveling all around the world, going from show to show, living a very nomadic lifestyle, having kids along the way, having my partner Daniel, take the show on the road, as we called it. And it involved a lot of commitment on all ends to be ready at the drop of a dime to pick up your life and move to a new country, which we did often. We lived in Europe for a little bit, in Toronto, in Atlanta, back to LA. And at one point, I think we had like 2 houses and a storage unit all in different cities. And so it was a wild journey, and it was really rewarding for many, many years.
And exhausting.
And there's such a shadow to the film and television world, as we hear bits of, but you're really expected to devote your entire life, your family's life, your well-being, your mental health, your physical health, everything to the show and whatever you're working on. And the amount of stories I have of missing family weddings, missing children's birthdays, missing doctor's appointments that were really important, because you get stuck and you can't leave, at least that's what they're telling you and you feel like. So I hit major burnout after being in the industry. It was almost at my 20-year mark. And thank goodness COVID came 2 months later, and then everything shut down. And I found myself with my wish that had come true, which was to not work for a minute. It was just delivered kind of in a different, very unexpected way.
Yeah. And that's when you started PALMA Colectiva.
Well, that's when you had a moment.
Yes.
Okay, so looking at COVID, for a lot of people, they were given that opportunity to have that break. right? And really switch gears.
Yeah.
Change their focus, change their lives. And that's what happened to you.
Absolutely. I feel like I was the poster child for the COVID awakening. Although it had been brewing in me before. And, you know, while I was doing this work in film and TV production, no matter where I was, I would seek out alternative healers, whether that was a meditation center, an actual healer, the you know, healing arts kind of version of a spa, because I found pretty early on that to sustain my mental health and my physical health, especially having little babies and working, I'm not exaggerating, where I'd be gone at least, you know, 15, 16 hours sometimes every day. I had to throw myself in any time I could into those healing modalities, right? And it was also really helpful that my partner, Daniel, was able to really help me and guide me with learning about those. And, you know, he was recently on the podcast talking about plant medicines. And although I knew, I was like, I'm not messing with that stuff. Well, I have to be on set Monday morning at 4:30 a.m. I'm not doing that. But learning about them, right? So then when COVID hit, I say, you know, both babies, I was back on set when they were 5 weeks old. So COVID, I had 9 months off. I had never in my career of 20 years had that much time. And I was so happy. And yes, there was the fear that we were all facing with, like, is this the end of the world? Like,
right.
What's happening?
Are we all going to die?
But then just being in this beautiful bubble. And ironically, it was, we were in Atlanta when COVID hit, and I was working on the remake of Dynasty, and I got COVID. Like, I called myself patient 0. And I was pretty sick. And as soon as I recovered, I had this feeling like, we have to get out of here. I had this like Handmaid's Tale scenario in my head for some reason. I'm like, we have to. So April 1st, we got on a flight, which was so surreal, and flew from Atlanta to LA. And we landed at my friend Taylor's house, coming full circle. This is how I know Ryan Turner, because it was his girlfriend at the time. And she had a house for sale up at the top of Laurel Canyon in LA that, you know, was pulled while no one was seeing houses. And she was like, come use this as a landing pad, come stay here with your family. So we were there, I think 6 weeks. And it was this beautiful experience for me to be with my children, to wake up every morning, to meditate. I learned breath work online. I started reading about Reiki. I did these gorgeous walks every day, and all the things that I had wanted to do and felt that I never could because of my career, I was able to do. And then that just sparked what became this beautiful journey of stepping into the world of wellness, mindfulness, and that's where PALMA was born. So I'm so grateful for COVID, and I say that with complete acknowledgement and respect of people who really suffered and lost lives. In my experience, I was able to finally answer my like true nature, honestly, answer the calling that I had felt within.
That's great.
It's a beautiful story, but it also brings up a phrase that I every time I say this, Karen groans. But there's a saying, but it is, 'tis an ill wind that blows nobody any good. And you've got to think about that a little bit. It's all the double negatives into it and so on. But somebody benefits, whatever happens. And it's not there's always that other side of the coin. And in your case, it gave you the freedom. And you were able to open your eyes.
A lot of people it did,
Of course, yeah. It did and actually financially for a lot of people. It was a very helpful time.
Well, not for me financially, but because I wasn't working, you know, all of Hollywood shut down. That was definitely something sitting with me. But as we know, people are not used to being alone with themselves. People are not used to being in silence.
No, it's terrifying.
It gave everyone this great pause, right?
Yeah.
Well, what's terrifying is with the pause is you have to sometimes look at the parts of you don't want to look at, right?
Yeah.
So for me, I was looking at the parts that had kept me in this business, which mostly was ego, because there was recognition and there's fame and notoriety and there's opportunity and there's money and all these things. And I'm like, but that's not what I want. and I feel it. And it took me, I'm not going to lie, I did 2 more jobs in LA during COVID because I am quite impulsive, but I did have a sense of like, okay, before I just call it quits, move to Santa Barbara, wherever, the wind was going to take us, I should probably plan this out a little bit. So I did 2 more shows in LA, and to be honest, I had the most horrific time on them, and every sign led me to like, it's time to leave. It also was a challenging time where we would have to wear so much gear because, as a costume designer, you're touching actors, you're around them all the time. And, there's so many double standards, as we know, in that business. And I'd be sitting there in like triple masked and a face shield and gloves, and the actors are walking around with nothing on. And because no one could see your face, there's already such challenging moments on sets where there's the standards of hierarchies, right? And all of a sudden you found certain people at the top treating people I found with such a lack of respect because there was no accountability. You couldn't see the person's face,
Yeah.
So I was just like, peace out. It's time. I'm moving to Santa Barbara.
Yeah. And so why did you pick Santa Barbara?
So I went to UCSB.
Okay.
And then there was a point after New York, I came back. I grew up in Ventura, and I decided I wanted to write a screenplay and make a short film. I needed a little pause from New York and costume design. And I did that. And when I came back here, I met Daniel, who had moved here from Mexico. And we started dating, and we both had such an affinity for Santa Barbara. He had family here. I had, grew up in Ventura, pretty close by. And Santa Barbara, has been a place for seekers. It's been a place historically for people looking for wellness, looking for their spiritual communities. And during COVID, we came up here quite a lot. I had still some friends up here that had stayed through college or from here. And, because it's a smaller town, you have the mountains and the beach, people were a little bit more lax with all the COVID restrictions so we could like take the kids to the beach and not feel guilty and things like that. So the more time we spent up here, I started asking around and noticing, there used to be a place called Alchemy Arts.
We talked
here that was way ahead of the time. It was a wellness center. And I started noticing, okay, there's some great yoga studios that are Santa Barbara staples like Yoga Soup. And there are some amazing, beautiful 5-star hotels like the Ritz-Carlton and now Miramar and the Biltmore. But where are the wellness centers? Where are the spaces where you can be working with many different modalities? Ideally bringing in food, retail, all these elements. I didn't see that here. And we had actually considered between here and Ojai. And Ojai, I feel like there's a wellness center on every corner. Santa Barbara, not so much. So that's why when the idea of PALMA really sparked, which was creating a space to offer multiple healing modalities, like in a highly curated way, doing retreats, having treatments, having as much of these, offerings as possible under one roof, it became clear that Santa Barbara was the place to go because it felt like there was opportunity, there was community, and it's insanely beautiful and a great place to raise a family. So that's how we ended up back here.
Yeah. Well, we knew Emma really well, who had Alchemy.
Yeah.
And she was ahead of her time. It was so beautiful and peaceful. Did you ever walk in the door there?
Oh, yeah, many times.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a gorgeous place.
Gorgeous.
It was
gorgeous.
Actually
prior to her time, it was a church. Yeah.
And
she just had a very special feeling about it.
Put her heart and soul into that project.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was before its time for sure. And then so when you started PALMA, you had a location, correct? So I just kind of want to go into, because I know our listeners are going to want to know what's going on right now with PALMA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, when we started, we didn't have a location.
Okay.
And we were really put on the map by this beautiful opportunity that landed in our laps through one of my dearest friends and one of the partners and investors in PALMA, Belhan. And she introduced us to Lotus Land and said, why don't we do a retreat at Lotus Land? That would be incredible. And I don't think people are really doing that at Lotus Land. So the stars aligned and we were able to do that. And that was our first event. So to come into the community at such a high standard as a beautiful place like Lotus Land Garden, people that just piqued people's curiosities.
Right.
Then soon after that, we found a studio in Victoria Court. And, you know, I, being a dreamer, came to town and was like, okay, I want, 3,000 square feet. We're going to have a cafe. We're going to have a shop.
Yeah.
We're going to have 4 treatment rooms. We're going to have saunas and cold plunges and baths. And then we started looking at places. I'm like, oh my gosh, I need $15 million. Like this, how is this going to happen? So I pivoted. And even though we had a great team of investors on board at this point, because I wasn't the only one apparently who came out of COVID saying we need more wellness, right?
Yeah.
Everyone has come out of COVID being really intrigued on many different levels of their wellness journeys. So it was easy to get some people on board, but we found this charming studio in Victoria Court that met none of the requirements that I had said I wanted, but had a beautiful energy. And I'm someone who I make decisions intuitively. And I walked into that space and it was a full body yes. And so we grabbed it, and it had a treatment room and a beautiful studio. And we had about 1.5 years there, and then just really outgrew it. And we're faced just with some, noise challenges and things like that. And so we currently are about to open a new studio downtown on Anacapa and Ortega. 2 of our investors bought the building that was the old Black Sheep restaurant, if you're familiar with that.
Spot.
And we're going to be taking over half of that. We're just having some, construction delays.
Takes forever in Santa Barbara to do anything.
So long, and I'm patiently marking another check off my list as what I have learned as a small business owner. So in the meantime, what's really great about our model with PALMA is that we're mobile, and we do so many collaborations in town. So we have partnerships with El Encanto Hotel, Maddie's Tavern Hotel, Lotus Land, like I mentioned, the Botanic Garden. So it's really, and now Coral Casino. And so it's really easy for us to plan events at locations, at people's homes.
And what
gardens.
are those? Explain like those collaborative ventures. Like, what are you doing in those spaces?
So, I mean, again, to tie this into this need of wellness, the hotels, gardens, clubs, everyone is recognizing that is the future of hospitality right now on many different levels. So it's very beneficial for us and for them, because instead of, hotels having to create their own wellness clubs within, they just hire us to come do it. So we've been doing, I call the sound bath the gateway drug, because it's what gets people in the door, because people just think people can be intimidated by this work. And so people are like, oh, a sound bath, I just have to lay there and someone's going to put a chime over me or something.
It's so nice. I did one. It was so peaceful.
It is. They're actually very powerful, and people are really moved by them. So that's kind of the blanketed one that we do a lot at the hotels. And then we'll bring in other events like more in the esoteric space. So astrology workshops, we'll bring in cacao and tea ceremonies. We'll do breath work. I did a retreat this weekend that was called Inner Wellness, Outer Beauty. And it was all about how our inner wellness creates and exudes beauty without, when we are truly aligned in our wellness journey. And we had 20 women show up for that. So we have an array of offerings that fall under the wellness umbrella and the mindful umbrella. And I do, even though they're very connected, there's some people that are more showing up for the wellness aspect. They want maybe physical movement, they want treatments. And then there's people showing up for the mindful and spiritual offerings, which are more, going deeper. Those are like the ceremonies, the rituals that we have. So what my favorite thing is to combine both. So you get the people who are just showing up for the wellness, and all of a sudden are finding themselves acknowledging their spiritual selves and their paths, and they're really intrigued and blown away by that. And then you're getting the people who maybe live a little too, permanently in the higher spiritual world, and sometimes need to come back down to earth and be grounded with some physical movement and some work. And so I really believe, I say PALMA is spiritual wellness, and that's really the integration of plant, body, and spirit. And it's looking holistically at wellness from all three aspects, right? So from the earth, what do we get from the earth? What do we need and get from our own body? And what do we get from our spiritual self?
And I love all that, especially because there is such a connection to all those things together, really making a shift in how you feel, right? I mean, sometimes just doing one, it's not enough. You have to kind of go deeper into the spiritual side to really make a change in how you're feeling, not just get a massage, or, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Because sometimes you get a massage and you're like, that didn't do anything,
Yeah.
Has that ever happened to you where I'm like, wait a minute, I needed something different that I didn't get, because for me right now, I mean, I used to always get a massage. For me, the better thing is that cranial sacral work,
Absolutely.
that really deep work, because I feel more relaxed, which you wouldn't think that. You think, oh, someone's massaging you, you're going to relax. Well, no, I go right here when someone's massaging me. I'm in my mind the whole entire time thinking. So I'm not relaxing. I'm just like over processing what happened during the week.
And I think
I mean?
it's the same with Reiki too. Sometimes people are like, no, I want a massage, I don't want Reiki. And when they try something new and they get a Reiki session, they'll walk out of there completely transformed. And but I also find this with people who perhaps are really disciplined in their workout routines. People who work out at least once, twice a day, and then you ask, and they're like, oh, this is wellness, I am healthy. And then you ask them to sit still for 30 minutes and they can't do it. So it is to me, peak wellness is that beautiful harmony of all three. And it's challenging to get there. And I think we all can identify, like maybe we lean in more to one or the other. And by plant, by the way, I mean, plant means so many things, right? So yes, there's plant medicines, there's the stronger plant medicines, which you guys have talked about. And then there's tea, and then there's cacao, and then there's food. Food is the ultimate plant medicine, right? So it's that connection. And then there's literally just putting our feet in the earth, right? So it really is the balance of all three. And that's what we strive for within the curation of our offerings, is to kind of hit all three of those.
Can you go slightly tangential here and talk a little more about Reiki to the
because you're a certified practitioner.
I am.
In Reiki.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So Reiki, there's
Reiki 101.
Reiki 101.
Yeah.
Reiki is energy work. Reiki is light energy. So within Reiki, you are calling upon light energy and using your body just as a vessel to then move that light energy onto whatever you are giving Reiki onto. I can give, well, this isn't a real plant.
No, because I kill everything. So
I could, but if it was a real plant, it would receive it much more potently. I could give Reiki onto an animal, onto a person, onto my food before I eat it. And Reiki is derived and comes from Japan. But what's beautiful is that there's so many different cultures and it's the same work. Like you were talking to Daniel, who practices intuitive healing, and he's from Mexico. Well, he doesn't call himself a Reiki master because he wasn't trained in that, but it's the same concept, right?
yeah.
Ultimately, there's a lot of very important details within there that are quite different, but ultimately it's the same as you are working with energy. So what people can expect in a Reiki session, some people do hands-on Reiki, some people do hands-off Reiki. I personally do hands-on. We also have an amazing practitioner at PALMA that does hands-off. You receive the same, and that's really the concept is you don't have to be touching someone to be giving them the energy or to be having the energy be received by them. Your hands can be slightly above, but people will feel like you'll have your eyes closed and you're like, I know her hands are above my heart right now. I feel my heart feels warm. I feel emotional. I'm recalling a memory where my heart was broken, or I'm recalling a memory where my heart was filled with joy. People often get strong visions. They go to that like theta state, and they can receive colors, or even that dream, like, you're almost dreaming, but you're able to recall what's coming in for you. People can connect with spirit energies, both on the table and as the practitioner. So some people who are highly intuitive too, while they're giving a Reiki session, they'll get hits, we can call them. So they will feel, okay, something that can happen with a Reiki practitioner is all of a sudden I'm giving Reiki and my right shoulder feels like it's throbbing, right? And so I'll move to that person's right shoulder, and perhaps then an emotion will come up for me, and I'll be able to relate that to that person. Let's say it was a rejection that for some reason they're holding in their shoulder. So this is the controversial part, I believe, because it's the fine line of, you're then afterwards, a lot of practitioners will then say to this person, okay, have you been rejected recently? I've noticed you're carrying something here, which is fine. And as long as that person is consenting to be open to that information. But sometimes maybe I'm feeling my rejection, and maybe it has nothing to do with this person. So I'm always very, not hesitant isn't the right word, but I always am very conscious of what I say to people in these. And some people just want intuitive hits. They're like, tell me, was my grandmother here? Am I going to get the job? And I'm like, go call a medium. I have plenty of amazing mediums who you could talk to. It's more about helping them find their own light, find their own power, like know their own answers, right? So we're just there as guides to help move the energy, help guide them into the direction for their healing journey. So I just say that because I do think there's a responsibility in a lot of this work as people turn more to intuitive healing, intuitive readings. Your words can change people's lives for better and for worse.
Right. Yeah.
And sometimes people hold on. I mean, I remember being in the Lower East Side and going to see some random psychic on the corner, and being like, I'm going to meet someone whose name starts with a J, and being like, I'm only going to go on dates with people whose name starts with J, that's ridiculous. So people can really attach, right, to what they want to hear.
Yeah.
So there is a bit of a responsibility there. And with PALMA, I talk to, because we have so many incredible intuitive practitioners of like, okay, let's be all on the same page about what we're sharing with people and how that may affect them,
I was told in my 20s that I was going to end up with someone with 5 kids.
That one worked out for you.
20 years later, I'm with someone with 5 kids.
And that can be,
so sometimes it's not always good news.
I've been told a lot of things over the years, and now I have a couple of people who I work with. I'm very careful and particular about who I work with energetically, and still to this day I take the things and I sit with them, and I'm like, oh, but do I live by them? No.
Yeah.
No.
Well, you can imagine being told that when you're in your 20s with 0 kids.
Yeah.
I was like, okay. Yeah, just store that back here somewhere.
You remembered it.
Not married. I was just like.
Well, you didn't have to get married to me to get my 5 kids.
That's right. I still have, yes.
Still have them.
But it's just so funny. So I've had Reiki before, and I really enjoyed it from Emma because she did Reiki.
Nice.
And she would always go to, different places with me, but I found it very deep work. And I'm probably harder to get to go deep because, again, my mind is just so going all the time. But I really liked it. I really liked having Reiki. It's great treatment.
It's powerful. And I think it's actually really good for people who struggle to be still because you're forced into it, right? And it's amazing once you can kind of break through that, once you stop thinking about being still and you let yourself surrender to the process, it's incredible what the transformations people can have. And there's also been a lot of instances where some of our team have been working with younger women, specifically like late teens, going through a lot of processes and journeys. And it's been remarkable to witness transformations there too.
So in your new center, sorry, Duncan, you can ask your question after mine.
I'm going to have to interrupt to do something here. That's all.
No, you go first.
No, go.
Okay.
Keep
In your
going.
new center, tell us.
I just want to be second. Okay.
What's going to be happening in your new center?
Well, we actually are going to have 2 new spaces, which is really exciting. So we're going to have a community-focused studio downtown Santa Barbara, and then we're going to have a private retreat space in the foothills of Carpinteria.
Oh.
And so the center downtown will be a bit more accessible than we've been.
That will block Black Sheep property.
Yes.
Okay.
And just quickly a question about that. There were, Black Sheep was sort of more on Ortega initially, and then I think it expanded to the Anacapa aspect of it because that was another restaurant for a while. So and now Black Sheep's moved elsewhere.
Yeah.
But which part are you in?
Right. So there's two parts to it. That's a very good point. There's one that's right on the corner of Anacapa and Ortega, and that has the actual restaurant, the kitchen in it. So our 2 investors are opening an apothecary cafe in that space, and it's going to be a beautifully curated wellness breakfast lunch spot.
Nice.
Where there's some grab and go options, some fresh juices, and then you can also grab some beautiful flowers and some medicinal herbs and things like that. And then we're taking the back side of it, which is closer to Dargan's and actually on Ortega with a huge arched window. That's going to be our studio space, and we're going to have a tea room and we're going to have a treatment room. So what's exciting for us is, because we came in with this highly curated concept, we set the standard of charging some rates that are higher for some of the work that has been offered in Santa Barbara. So it's different if you go to a yoga studio and you have a class pass there and you're dropping $20, right? We curate a very well-rounded experience. So when you come to PALMA, you don't have to bring anything. We have these beautiful yoga rugs and sheepskins and linen eye pillows, and we serve tea, and it's a small group. So our whole experience was a higher ticket price. But with that, I felt that there was a demographic in this community that was being overlooked. And that sat heavy with me because I don't want people to feel that they can't afford mindful and wellness work, especially people who really need it. So what I'm excited about is with this space, we're going to be able to kind of lower some of the pricing for some events or have more community focused events and then have our higher ticketed events as well. So that's something I'm really excited about because we do a beautiful community offering that's cacao and poetry, and everyone drinks cacao and reads a poem. It's one of the most incredible events and offerings we have, and we've been charging $22 for it. And so now with this new space, we're going to be able to do that make sure we have 30 people in there who really feel connected and want to meet people and share their creativity. Then
we will definitely come to the next one you have.
Oh, I would love it.
Let me know.
Yeah.
Okay.
I want to expand on the we there because I know that most of this is being focused towards women. So where do we get in?
Is he allowed?
Oh, yes. Well,
so
it's interesting. Because
I don't want to be forgotten here.
No, you are not forgotten. The men are not forgotten. And I actually disagree. This is a little provocative, but I think there is a place for women's work exclusively. And I'm part of a lot of that. But we the men are just as important as this whole thing that the women are more important than the men or something. That's, to me, ridiculous. We have to, the women right now are leading in the wellness and mindful space that I feel very strongly about. Men have to be at the table too. We can't just have the women do, like, we all have to be doing this together. However, right now we are in the time of the feminine, and it's the women who are feeling more drawn to this work. It's the women that are showing up. I've done my best to create a space through design, through marketing, through all the things that men feel welcome to as well. However, I'm a very feminine woman and I care a lot about design, beauty, aesthetics. So it does tend to be on the more feminine side. However, men are always welcome at all of our events unless it exclusively says it's a women's circle. Perfect example, though, we did this retreat, the inner wellness, outer beauty, on Saturday. It was 20 women. Normally, I guess a man may not sign up for an event like that, but the sound baths, breath work, retreats, we have a lot of men. Usually it's women bringing their partners, but again, it's like the gateway once you get your foot in the door, and then that opens up, right? And we hosted a men's group one time, and so there's a lot more space for that. And I'm very, it's at the forefront of my mind and every decision I make, and I really want to bring more men in.
There are some great men's groups. Men groups.
Yes.
Wait,
I find
group?
most men's groups
Men's
meet
groups?
at people's houses, and it's a little bit more challenging to get them into the community space, but we're going to be able to explore that with our new space. So
when does that all happen? When are you going to be there and functional in that place?
I'm saying November. I'm hoping.
But you're doing
early
retreats
November.
now.
In the meantime, we still have 2 to 3 classes and workshops a week, and we're just doing them at a variety of locations. So we have a meditation workshop starting tonight. That's 3 weeks. It's meeting at a private residence. You know, we have.
How do people get that information?
It's all on our website and on Instagram. And then the second part of this is that we're opening this space, hopefully January or early February. That's more of a highly curated retreat space. So
and that's in Carpinteria.
And that's way back off of Toro Canyon. And it's going to be incredible. And it's a place.
Is it a house? Is it a barn?
It's a house. Okay. Yeah. So it's a place for small groups where PALMA will curate your experience. So there will be some public retreats and workshops, but then it's also a place where you're having a birthday weekend, and instead of going to the wineries, you want to curate a wellness weekend for you and your friends. It's a place where you can come do that and do treatments. There's a treatment room, swimming, sauna, beautiful gardens, incredible views. So it's really, that's something I feel really passionate about, because that was kind of my first intention with PALMA, was having a retreat space. And, you know, as many things do, they evolve and take different forms over the years. And so to me, that's really coming back, because I find in that retreat, when people are devoting their time and their energy to a retreat, you know, that word retreat, you're going there to work on something, whether it's to work on yourself, to work on your mindfulness, to work on your body, to relax, to work on your friendship, to work on your relationship. So people come with that intentionality. So I find that's where real potent healing can happen. And I'm really looking forward to what we're able to curate in this space.
That's exciting.
And what about let's just say, just putting your toes in the water, meaning just a sort of an entry level to a retreat by way of, okay, I'm going to go to this place because I heard such good things about it, but I'm not sure I want to be that involved right now. I'm a little unsure. But do you have regular massage services available that are just a break-in part of somebody who just really wanted to say, okay, I'm interested in this. I want to take the first step.
Well, the sound bath And the cacao and poetry. I think
Yeah.
anything like that.
Yeah, I think there's definitely, or also like the tea ceremony. We do Cha Dao tea ceremony, which is the Chinese lineage of a silent tea meditation. It's phenomenal, and people will drink tea and have complete breakthroughs, including myself. It's one of my favorite offerings.
What happens? So you go in, you walk in.
It's a small group, usually no more than 10 people. And we have we have a couple practitioners, one Morgan, Francesca, and Ojai, and one Lizzie Smith. She's here in town. They serve. They've been trained and they've devoted their lives to Cha Dao, to learning Cha Dao, to serving Cha Dao. And
Cha Dao is tea?
Is the way of tea.
Okay.
Way of tea. So it's tea served in bowls. So it's a whole ritual it's a dance. It's a dance of the water. It's a dance of the tea. It's a dance of serving the bowls. It's all done through eye contact. There's no speaking. You're sitting there in a half circle. And sometimes if we're outside, there's no music at all. Sometimes if we're inside, there's some beautiful instrumental meditation music. And we sit there for an hour and we drink a lot of tea, a lot of tea. And it's beautiful, beautiful red teas and black teas. And normally there's tears. It's just such an emotional gift of beauty and insight. Sometimes grief comes up for people.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, people aren't used to being in silence. So there's this quote that my Kundalini teacher, who I met many years ago, at Emma's space. Her name is Siddhi Ma. She always says, and I believe Osho said it, in the stillness, you will hear all the answers. And I think about that often because people will come to a tea ceremony, for example, who have not been used to being silent with themselves and drink tea for an hour and have the most profound insights to different aspects of their life, whether it's family, love, relationships, work, children. And because we all have this inner knowing, but we don't often let ourselves fully listen to ourselves. So it's in these moments you can. So that's a beautiful thing for people who are curious to step into. But for the retreats, we do a lot of these day retreat models, which you don't have to commit then to a full 3 days, 4 days, which I understand some people work and that's hard to do sometimes. You can come to a day retreat and for example, I keep referencing this beauty retreat, but it was the first one we did. We do a lot of intense work at some of our retreats. We do grief retreats. We do, looking at your shadows. And I personally love that, but I'm acknowledging it's not for everyone. It's not everyone's cup of tea per se. And so I had a friend recently who said, can you just do a retreat where we hang out at a pool and drink wine? And I'm like, well, not totally, but I'll give my version of that. And so I did this beauty retreat, which was treatments. And we did have tea. We did an Ayurvedic lunch. We did sculptural face lifts, which are a facial massage technique. And we did Reiki and we did a sound bath, and that was a perfect example for people who wanted to come to a PALMA retreat, but maybe weren't feeling drawn to like doing the deep shadow work.
Yeah.
And it was a day of beauty. So
where was that?
That was at a private residence by the Mission here in town.
Okay.
So those
and I know you were at El Encanto.
Yeah, we do a monthly residency there of sound baths at the Lily Pond. Yeah.
What a great spot.
It is.
And then you were over in the valley at...
Yeah, we did. We also are doing monthly events at Maddie's Tavern. So getting our Santa Ynez community, giving them, we're going to be doing full moon rituals there with sound every month. And we're going to be offering some treatments at their spa as well.
It's so pretty, that property.
Yeah.
So if you, in that particular event, what's the timing of that? What? You're saying it's the full moon event.
Oh, yeah.
Tomorrow.
Oh, yeah, tomorrow, except we're starting in October.
Okay.
But yes.
Not this moon.
Tomorrow, actually, though, we're doing, this moon is an important one. It's the harvest moon.
Yeah.
And we're doing a offering at the Botanic Garden. So that's another collaboration we do. And we love that because it's a community event. It's $30 if you're a member at the Botanic Garden. It's $40 for non-members. And we do our whole PALMA setup. And so we're doing a harvest moon ritual there tomorrow. But the Maddie's Tavern events, most of our classes or workshops are 90 minutes. So an hour and a half, right? So you can usually try to give yourself an hour and a half to.
And they're all listed on your website.
Yes. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Very intriguing. Very interesting and frankly attractive.
I'm really excited about this because it's different. I like the idea for your space, and obviously that restaurant being right there is just going to really help.
Yeah.
And feed, and then keeping those retreats going, because I think, like, to your point, people do like to go somewhere to or away where they feel, more in touch with nature, to really feel like they've checked out of their normal life. So
absolutely. And people love coming to Santa Barbara for that reason. And that's why it's nice. One thing I should note too is we've been working at Zaca Lake, which I don't know if you're familiar with.
I saw that. Yes.
So Zaca Lake, for those that don't know, is this incredible, one of the only natural spring-fed lakes in the area. And it is in the middle of the Los Padres National Forest in Santa Ynez. And
do they still have catfish in there?
I don't know about catfish, but they have these huge orange.
Okay, maybe they got rid of the catfish. They used to have some pretty crazy catfish in there.
There may still be in there. I'm always swimming around. I don't know. I'm one of
you would know it.
Southern
you would know
California,
it's a thing. Yeah,
well, we're not used to lakes here.
No,
in Southern, or lakes. There's no swimmable lakes in the area, right? So there's definitely some of us, the East Coasters, just jump right in, but us West Coasters are a little hesitant in lake water. But it's sacred water, so it's originally sacred Chumash land, and this was their. They named it Zaca Lake, which means peaceful valley, and there's this myth that the Zaca Lake is actually a cenote, goes down into a cenote that connects all the way to the Channel Islands, to the Pacific Ocean. That is Chumash legend. The interesting part in current day is that apparently they've never been able to measure the depth of the bottom of the lake.
Wow.
So
the deep, dark green hole.
Yes, it's amazing. And I'm telling you, you get in that water and you just get to Zaca Lake in general. And then if you get in that water, you feel the energy there. It is, I'm not saying it's a vortex or a portal, but there's a massive energy peak in that area. And it's had this kind of sordid history where it's been it's been a retreat center. It burned down. They shot a horror film there. There's all these
Friday the 13th
legends. I don't know if it was Friday.
I think so. The first one.
It was some that
or Halloween. Yeah. It was one of those one of those first horror part 1, part 2, part 3. It was I thought it was no wait, I can't remember. I'll have to Google it.
The stories that I've heard about Zaca Lake from people were like, oh, I used to go there as a kid and then it burned down. And, there's so many, or there was parties there. But these two families bought it, I think about 4 years ago now, and spent quite a long time and did a beautiful restoration of the property.
Great.
And have turned it into a gorgeous high-end retreat and gathering space.
Is there still a restaurant there?
The restaurant burned down. That's what burned down, but they're rebuilding it.
Okay.
Well, and then in July, there was the lake fire, which started just by Zaca Lake, and it annihilated most of the forest around the property, but the actual structures were saved. The redwoods were saved too, which is great because they have stunning redwoods on the property. So
I'm very familiar with the property.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've stayed there before.
Okay.
And do people stay there during your retreat?
Yeah. So there's beautiful cabins.
Yeah.
They have a dome for ceremonies and offerings. They have a barn for meals. And so we were connected with them. They came to an event, the owners, and they were like, we really love what you're doing. We want to bring the wellness into Zaca Lake. So we did a grief retreat there with a grief and letting go coach, Dr. Amar Atma, who I would highly recommend bringing on this podcast. And I'll fill you more in about him later.
Please do.
We've been doing amazing work with him. He is a local grief and letting go coach, but has an international following. We actually have another grief retreat coming up with him in November, a day retreat, because the grief work is so profound. And as we all have started to be more attuned to, it's not, I think we all thought grief work was like, oh, I can only do grief work if I lost my parent or significant other or child or had this huge loss. But actually there's so many little, quote unquote, little that add up and aren't losses that we experience around and are grieving for, whether it's identity, relationships, past selves, so many different things. So that's another.
No, and I'm also looking for someone for end of life.
Yes, I got you there.
So let's talk after the show.
Yes. So we did.
Oh, it's Friday the 13th, the final chapter, 1984.
Wow. Thank you.
A little fact checking online.
Yep. Amazing.
Right.
Yeah.
I think I missed that one. Thank God. But so we started with a grief retreat there, which was just incredible. And then we did a day retreat there over the summer. Everyone loved it. So we have our third event there, October 19th. It's called Sacred Sites. And we've worked very closely with this woman, this author, Jessica Hunley, who has a collection of books with Toshin called The Library of Esoterica. And there are Sacred Sites is now the 5th book, but she has plant magic, tarot, witchcraft, and astrology. So Sacred Sites, for the launch of it, we've teamed together with her, and we're doing the event at Zaka Lake, which is a sacred site. And it's a day retreat, and we have guest speaker Matthias De Stefano, who's a really an Argentinian thought leader, spiritual teacher, who's coming, and another woman named Isis Indria, who has a beautiful, she has the Academy of Oracle Arts. So they're coming for guest speakers, and we're expecting about 100 people. It's our biggest event we've ever done. And we're really excited for that. So I'm just so...
When is that?
October 19th, Saturday, October 19th. It's a full day, and you can add on a cabin to stay the night if you like. So this is just another beautiful example of people wanting to bring this work into their spaces. And, these owners, they could just book weddings the whole time and call it a day. And they're like, no, we want to bring in meaningful work, healing work. We recognize that this is a very powerful, potent healing property, and that's what we're calling in. So I really appreciate that, and we're going to continue the relationship there, because as we know, it's interesting. There's not a lot of retreat spaces in this area where you can bring a large group of people. So it's nice that this is starting to exist more.
We were in British Columbia probably a year ago now, about that, I think. Because I lived and worked on the west coast of Vancouver Island for a few years, and we were staying there. There's a hotel on the west coast that's basically built for storm watching. I mean, it's gorgeous in the summer when it's a sunny day. The beaches are fantastic, but the magnificence you appreciate more, or at least as much, when there's a raging storm. But while we were there, I had a massage there, and it was sort of indoors and outdoors, and it was cold. I mean, we'd actually gone through a snow blizzard to get there. And it was so unusual and impactful for me. My thinking was, we need something in Santa Barbara this was so... It was minimal compared to what you do.
But it started with tea, and then you sat outside in the cold, and they put all these blankets on you, and then they put your feet in really warm water, or you know what I mean? And you start, it kind of like wasn't just a massage. It was like a whole...
It was a process. It was an event. And I thought, we've got to be able to do something like this in Santa Barbara. And that thought has been latent until talking to you. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I mean, there are a lot of people who have been thinking that, because I've met a lot of people along my journey. And Santa Barbara is rich with possibility in that sense, and very challenging from a financial standpoint to buy a property like that and make it work. So I believe that's why we haven't seen that as much. And I think, but I think that's going to be changing. I think that there's going to be more spaces like Zaka Lake, more hotels that are going to evolve into the wellness model. Because if you look at the numbers right now, and I'm learning to be a business person. I'm a business owner, and I am excited by it. But I would say the creative side is more of my passion, and I'm stepping into that business mindset and mentality. the numbers for the wellness industry are in the trillions and are just keep going up. And you'll see in big cities, there's wellness clubs popping up left and right. There's retreat center.
It's all about wellness.
It's all about wellness and retreats. So it will be continuing to grow in this area. And it's just a matter of people who can come in and afford to buy the $20 million properties and turn them into wellness spaces.
Well, I think your example is just ideal. These places that already have the space and already have the infrastructure to do it, and have a list of clients.
And they don't want to be bothered with,
and they don't want to do. And frankly, you want to have somebody that you can, with a track record like yourself, of putting these things on. So I think it's a marriage made in heaven.
Yeah, I'd like to do an event with you with our patients.
Yeah.
Because we have a lot of female and male, actually.
Thank you. Really.
Because the husbands now have to keep up with the wives.
Absolutely. And
well,
that's one of the things that's been very clear in my practice of just focusing on women's health for 45 years, and that the guys have got a little left behind. And so now I do see men in the practice for hormonal treatments and
so I call them the biohacking bros.
Yeah.
and not in a bad sense, but I think that's women like the word wellness, and men are into this, anything like biohacking, right? Okay. And women too get into that, but I think that's like I said, that's part of the wellness journey. And then it's bringing in the spiritual, the plant side of it. So they're working on the body. And, there are a lot of places in town that are popping up and having all these alternative treatments with the cold plunges and the deprivations and tanks and things like that.
I don't think, though, somebody that opens up with a cold plunge is a wellness place or a longevity medicine. I feel like there's a bit of that happening now where people just sign up and say they're this when there's not really that.
There's no depth to it.
Well, it's a hot term, longevity, regeneration, like all of these terms are.
Yeah, all of that's very valid, and that's a great focus of my practice, but it's really a deep dive into it.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just we're looking, biochemically at people and biophysically, just to look for trouble before it presents itself.
Yeah.
And so it's looking at not just longevity, not just a longer life. It's health span. It's having a very good end of life, very good extension of life in a very healthy way that benefits everybody.
Yeah.
So,
and I think on that note too, you see a certain group of people coming, aging into a certain bracket where perhaps it's the first time they've really sat and looked at the spiritual side as well. Because all of a sudden death is a conversation that's feeling more attainable, or more is knocking at their door, so to speak, in some ways. And people had never thought about that before. And this beautiful example just came to mind. We did a grief movement class one time with a woman who's a movement and voice coach and has been through her own grief journey. And there was an older man, I think he was 76, who came in, and I was past judgment. I was like, that's somebody interesting to see here. He did not look like he, quote unquote, belonged in the space. And we started talking, and he had lost his wife recently. And in this grief movement workshop, we had to create a story of our grief through movement to music that was being played. And we went each one by one. And he danced his heart out and gave the most, I'm getting teary-eyed thinking about it now, the most insightful, intuitive, beautiful movement I've ever seen in my life. And he shared after that, like, he had never, I think he said he was a dentist and he had a wild career. And he said he never thought about his spiritual self, his the spiritual world around him until his wife passed. And then he was forced to look at it. And it opened up this whole world into this work for him. And it's those moments that I'm like, oh, it's so moving to see. And I think, back to COVID, like this gave us all this shift, and the people who you wouldn't expect to be intrigued and attracted to this work, they're the ones that I love the most, that come in the door. I love being surprised. I love being proven wrong. Like, and I'm very aware of how I'm not going to pretend I don't judge. We all do. So there's certain little micro judgments that maybe happen, and then I'm proven wrong, and it like gives me so much joy to see this. So that's what I mean when I believe it's all connected. So yes, I'm not going to pretend I know much about the longevity science that's out there right now, because that feels like a different world to me. But I love the idea of blending it all, and that's kind of where I'm moving more and more, PALMA, into that direction.
Yeah, and really just another example of women leading the way, in my opinion. So thank you.
Oh, thank you.
We could go on all day, but thanks for coming today.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Right. Well, thanks for listening. We're getting really good feedback. We'd really appreciate a review on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or wherever you're listening. Thank you. You can always DM the Vagina Doctor Instagram with any questions or topics you'd like to learn more about, or email us. The Vagina Doctor Podcast. It all starts here.